20 years. That is how long it sat in the drawer. A sealed envelope, placed at the back of a desk drawer in a house in Bel Air, California, on an autumn evening in 1969. 2 words written on the outside in the handwriting that anyone who has ever seen Bruce Lee's personal documents would recognize. Precise, small, unhurried. 2 words: do not open. Inside, a document that Bruce Lee had written alone on a Tuesday night when Linda was asleep, and the house was quiet, and he had been sitting at the desk for 2 hours with a blank piece of paper in front of him, thinking about what he wanted to say. It was his own obituary. He was 28 years old when he wrote it. He would be dead at 32. And the things he wrote in that document, the specific things, the predictions, the assessments, the account of a life not yet half finished, written from the vantage point of someone who appeared to know, with the particular certainty of a man who understood things about himself that most people never arrive at. Those things, when they were found in 1993, produced in every person who read them the same reaction. Silence. Not the silence of shock, the silence of recognition, the silence of people who had spent 20 years knowing what Bruce Lee was and who were now holding a piece of paper he had written alone on a Tuesday night, finding out that he had known it too. Welcome back to the channel where the legend of Bruce Lee lives on. Stay with me, because this is not a story about death. This is a story about a man who understood his life clearly enough at 28 to write its conclusion, and about what that document reveals about who Bruce Lee actually was underneath everything the world saw. Los Angeles, California, autumn, 1969. The house is in Bel Air, a rental in the period of Bruce Lee's life when his career has produced enough income to live comfortably, but not yet the money that the films in Hong Kong will eventually bring. Large enough for Bruce, Linda, and their son Brandon, who is 2 years old. Bruce Lee is 28 years old. He has been in America for 11 years. He has been building for 11 years the thing he is building, the system, the philosophy, the approach to martial arts and to movement and to human physical capability that he has been calling Jeet Kune Do since 1967. A name, and also a pointer toward something the name cannot fully contain. He has been teaching. He has been training. He has been writing the notebooks that will eventually become, when they are collected after his death, some of the most unusual documents in the history of martial arts. He has been in The Green Hornet and several other productions, and has been having the conversations with Hollywood studios that will eventually produce the opportunity to make the films that will change everything. He is also, and this is less documented but present in the accounts of the people who knew him in this period, been thinking, not just about the work, about the life, about the relationship between what he was doing and what it meant, about the specific shape of the thing he was trying to build and how long it would take. And this is the quality of his thinking that most distinguished him from other people, about what the thing would become after him, not after his career, after his life. He thought about this at 28, the way most people do not think about it until much later, if they think about it at all. He sat at his desk on a Tuesday night in the autumn of 1969, with Linda asleep and Brandon asleep and the house quiet at 2 a.m, and he wrote. He wrote his own obituary. If you love Bruce Lee stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day. What he wrote has been described by the people who eventually read it after the envelope was found in 1993 in accounts that agree on its essential qualities. It was not a conventional obituary. A conventional obituary is a record, a list of achievements, milestones, the external markers that a life produces as it moves through time. Bruce Lee wrote something different. He wrote an assessment, not what he had done or would do, but what he was, what the thing he was building represented, what it would mean, how it would be understood. He wrote about martial arts, not about his specific accomplishments, about what martial arts was and what it could be and what he had understood about it that he believed had not been fully understood before him and that would survive him. He wrote about the principle of adaptability, of formlessness, of the specific relationship between technique and the thing underneath technique that he had been working toward for 20 years and that he described in the document as not yet complete. He wrote, "I have not finished. What I leave behind when I go is a direction, not a destination. The destination is further than I will reach. I am pointing at it. I want the people who come after me to understand that I am pointing, not arriving. He wrote about his children. He wrote about Brandon and about Shannon, who had not yet been born when he wrote the document, but who he appeared to have anticipated, using the plural in a section addressed to Linda. Shannon was born in 1969, the same year as the document. He either wrote it after her birth or anticipated it in a way that has made several people who have studied the document uncomfortable with the word coincidence. He wrote about Linda. He wrote about her with the specific, unperforming honesty of a man writing something he does not expect to be read soon. He wrote about what she had given him and what he had not always been able to give her in return, and what he wished on the record to have acknowledged, even in a sealed envelope in a drawer. He wrote about what he expected the world to make of him after he was gone. This is the section that the people who have read the document describe with the most consistent sense of unease. Not because it is frightening, because it is accurate. He wrote about how the films would eventually be found and understood. He wrote about how the philosophy would take longer than the films to be received. He wrote about the specific misunderstandings he expected, the ways that the technique would be remembered and the thing underneath the technique would be lost, and why he believed this was inevitable, and what he hoped would eventually correct it. He was right about almost all of it, not in the vague way of predictions that can be interpreted to fit almost any outcome, in the specific way of predictions that either happen or do not happen, and that, in this case, happened. The films were received first. The philosophy came later. The surface was separated from the principle. The technique was remembered, and the thing underneath was, for years, obscured. And then, slowly, the thing underneath came through, just as he wrote that it would. He was 28 years old when he wrote this. He sealed the envelope. He wrote 2 words on the outside. He put it in the drawer. He went to bed. He did not mention it to anyone. Linda Lee found the envelope in 1993, 20 years after Bruce Lee's death. She was going through the last of his papers, a process that had taken years because there were many papers, because Bruce Lee was a prolific writer in the private sense, filling notebooks and folders with the ongoing work of a mind that did not stop working when the physical training stopped. The drawer she found it in was one she had opened many times in the 20 years since his death. She did not know what was in it. The 2 words on the outside, "Do not open," were in his handwriting, and she had respected them without knowing what she was respecting. Not out of fear, out of the specific quality of trust that a person who loved Bruce Lee learned to extend to the things he did without explaining. She opened it in 1993. She read it alone. What she did afterward, the phone calls, the conversations, the eventual decision to allow a small number of people to read the document, has been described as the behavior of someone who had just read something that changed what they already knew. Not what they knew about Bruce Lee. What they knew about what Bruce Lee knew about himself. She called Shannon. Shannon was 23 years old in 1993. She had grown up after her father's death, had spent her life in the particular position of someone whose parent is famous and gone, who knows them through other people's accounts rather than through direct experience. She read the document. She said, in an interview given several years later, that reading it was the closest she had ever felt to knowing her father as a person rather than as a figure. She said, "He wrote it at 28. He was almost exactly my age when I read it, and he was describing a life that was still mostly in the future when he wrote it, describing what it would mean, what would survive, and what would be misunderstood. And he was right. He was almost entirely right." She paused. She said, "The hardest part was the part about his children. He wrote about us in a way that made it clear he had thought seriously about what it would mean for us not to have him. What he hoped we would understand about him that we couldn't learn from the films." She said, "He hoped we would understand that the work was for us. In the literal way. He was building something he intended to give to us. The direction, he wrote, not the destination. He wanted us to know the direction so we could keep going in it. If you love Bruce Lee stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day. The document has not been published in full. Linda Lee and Shannon Lee have made the decision to keep the full text private. What exists in the public record is what the people who have read it have described in their own words. What they have described is this: he knew. Not in the supernatural sense, in the sense that a man of extraordinary self-awareness who has spent his life studying the relationship between what a person is and what they do, sometimes arrives at a knowledge of themselves that exceeds what is comfortable. He knew what the work was. He knew what it would become. He knew approximately how long he had, not with certainty. He was writing an assessment, not a prophecy. He was writing what he understood at 28 about the shape of a life he could see clearly enough to describe. And what he described was accurate enough that the people who read it felt the specific vertiginous sensation of recognizing something they had not known they were going to recognize. He wrote, "Be water, my friend." He had been saying this for years, but in the document he used it differently, as instruction to himself. He wrote, "This is what I am trying to become, not what I am. What I am trying to become. I have not arrived. I am in the direction of it." He wrote, "When you read this," and he was writing to Linda, but also to whoever she eventually chose to share it with, "I want you to know that the direction was always the point. Not where I got, where I was going. The going is the thing." He was 28 years old. He had 4 years left. In those 4 years, he made The Big Boss and Fist of Fury and The Way of the Dragon and entered production on Enter the Dragon, the film released 6 weeks after his death that made his name permanent in the Western world. He had described, at 28, sitting alone at his desk at 2 a.m, approximately what would happen. He put it in a sealed envelope. He went to bed. Bruce Lee wrote in the notebooks of this period, "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." He was not writing about fame. He was writing about the quality of the living, about what it means to move through a life with sufficient attention and honesty that the life, when it ends, contains something other people can use. He understood at 28 that his life contained something people would use. He wrote it down. He sealed it in an envelope. He waited. He went on living. 4 more years of the most extraordinary accumulation of work that any martial artist has ever compressed into a life. And then he was gone. And 20 years later, Linda opened the drawer and found the envelope and read what he had left. And it was as he said it would be. That is not a story about death. That is a story about what it means to know yourself clearly enough at 28 to write the truth of what you are and what you are building and what it will mean. And to be right. Bruce Lee was right. He knew. He always knew. Be water. Know the direction. Keep moving in it. The destination is further than any of us will reach. But the direction is enough. He left us the direction. That is everything. If this story moved you, the subscribe button is right there, because the next story involves a 13-year-old boy told by his own master that he would never make it, and what he did for 6 years that silenced every master in Hong Kong. You are not going to want to miss it. Drop a comment below. If you had to write your own obituary today, what would you say? The legend lives on. If you love Bruce Lee stories, like this video and subscribe. New stories every single day.